Hey guys, welcome into another episode of From the Wing. I'm Christian Clark, the Pelicans beat writer for Noel.com and the Times-Picayune. Vegas. The Pelicans are in Vegas. The NBA play-in tournament is going to be in Vegas. We finally got some details about that over the weekend. A couple of the big newsbreakers had leaked a little bit of the stuff out, but the NBA finally made an official announcement about the play-in tournament and how it's going to work. If you listen to this podcast, you know I was pretty pessimistic about it. I've got to say, now that I've seen all the information, I don't dislike it as much as I thought I would. Here are the basic details. It's going to start in early November. There's going to be 30 teams separated into 5 groups. They'll play 4 group games, 2 on the home, 2 on the road. Those games, the group games, are going to be on Tuesdays and Fridays. So they've kind of got a schedule for this thing. The top 6 teams in each group will go to the quarterfinals along with 2 wild cards, and it's single elimination from there. The semifinals and finals will be in Las Vegas in early December. The players on the winning team get $500,000 each. Do you have any thoughts on this thing the NBA is adding to try to make the beginning of the regular season matter a little bit more?
I don't think they're going to accomplish their goal. I think we've heard for years that Adam Silver he's a bit preoccupied with the idea of like the European soccer model and all that. We've talked about it a few times on here, and that's what he's chasing. I think all this did is it gives him another premium product to sell. Like they're just trying to create something for TV fodder, for contract fodder, for streaming rights fodder. I think it'll work, but pretending that this is about making the regular season matter more, I think that's a sell job. Like I really believe that they're selling that mythology to people that are going to pay for the rights to broadcast it and produce it and whatnot. I don't believe that whatever they're selling to fans about the regular season mattering more. The only thing that's like a pleasant surprise here is that the way that it's designed doesn't interfere with the regular season very much. They're not like going out of their way to make this painful for teams. Although like doing it in December feels fairly odd. Like there's a time period kind of in March where like things die down and there's like an open schedule period where you could like February, March, where this could kind of fit in. But maybe I guess that's too close to All-Star or whatever. Yeah. So it's not as bad as it could be. It shouldn't affect the players all that much. It shouldn't change anything for the regular season all that much. All of those are positives, I guess. But this chatter that it's like gonna make the regular season matter, it's not. It's not. Like, good for the guys on the end of the bench whose team wins and they get, $500,000. That's awesome. But aside from that, like, it's not seismic money. It's not anything of real importance. And it's missing all of like the fundamental pieces that make those European models work. And like the secret of those European, like those lower cups, the domestic cups, is that you play your B team the whole way to the finals. All the best teams don't play their best players the whole way. They play crappy versions of their teams to just go out there and do the thing and just barely win. And then they take it seriously at the very end. And that's certainly not a thing that's going to happen here or that would make the product better. So it's all very odd. It's very contrived, and it feels like very much a business play more than anything else.
The Pelicans this upcoming season are going to be in the West B group, along with the Denver Nuggets, Los Angeles Clippers, Dallas Mavericks, and Houston Rockets. Fairly difficult draw for them. I mean, let's just say the Pelicans, they go 3-1 in group play. They get one of the wild card bids, and they advance to the finals, and it's the Pelicans versus the Boston Celtics on December 9th on a Friday night in Vegas. I mean, I feel like that would mean something for this team, right? Like, I'm just, it's all hypothetical, but like, I'm not saying it's a huge deal, but I'm like, that would be fun. I mean, I would enjoy watching that, I think.
If it got to that, but it's probably like one of two things is going to happen. Either better teams that have championship goals backpedal in the thing and don't want the extra game and don't want the extra Vegas travel and all that stuff. And you see teams like ours go like full force against teams putting out their B squad. and then they win, and then you discredit them because they didn't play against the best of the best version of that team, like Anthony Davis sat for the Lakers or some crap like that. Or Jokic sits for the Nuggets. Or hell, we're in the Clippers group. One of the two of them doesn't play, or they alternate and they play like every other game. There's just a lot of ways this could turn out to just not be pure competition. If it was pure competition and it's everybody plays their hardest through and everybody cares and it ends up us versus the Celtics, yeah, it's cool for you to be able to say you did something, but it's going to be is like us raving on Twitter and talking shit on Twitter for a day, and then the rest of the NBA is not going to care because that actually doesn't mean anything.
$500,000 is so much money to a guy like Jose Alvarado, and it's such a insignificant amount of money for a guy like Zion Williamson. Like just the way the contracts are in the NBA and how much the best guys gets paid versus, like the guys on the bench and the minimums earlier in their careers. Like, if somehow they made it to the finals, like I feel like Jose would be like, oh my God, $500,000. Like we're doing everything to win this game. And Zion would be like, I mean, that's like 1/10 of the money like 1/50th of the money I'll make this year. If you had, my contract and all the endorsements, it's just such a different amount of money. My take on how to improve the regular season in general. I've said for a long time, I think 82 games is too many. I think they should go down to like 60 or something like that. I think maybe they should even explore like having NBA games on specific days of the week to try to make it a ritual, like the NFL is. I get why that's probably never going to happen. Like we're probably just not going to ever see them take away games at this point. I feel like that would be the best thing to do, but that's not what they're going to do. It's not even a half measure. It's like an eighth of a measure or a quarter measure to try to make the NBA regular season just mean a little bit more. And, I don't hate it, but to me, this did not address the core issue with the NBA regular season, which is 82 is too many now. Like these guys are just running way more than they did 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago. They're bigger. They jump higher. I just don't think like guys' bodies, a lot of guys are like built to play 82 anymore.
I'm really excited for the tournament finals matchup of Utah Jazz versus Orlando Magic. Really, really hyped about that.
Look, man,
that's what it feels like. Look, I feel like
if you're watching the NBA, like I feel like people who listen to this podcast, like they are the people watching the NBA before Christmas. But I feel like a lot of people are like, look, I'm just not tuning in before Christmas, and a lot of people are like, catch me at the All-Star break. So for us who are already the sickos, it's cool, it's fine. But like,
it'll be fine.
I don't know that this helps you, like increase the size of the funnel and like capture a much broader audience or anything like that.
But I do think they'll accomplish the real goal, which is creating another premium event to include in a contract to sell as a more NBA product. That's the real goal. That has been the real goal the entire time. That achieved. They got it agreed to. Like Adam Silver will have this as like check off one of the boxes that he's always wanted. He found a way in a world where the last thing we wanted to do was expand more games when that's all owners ever want to do because more games means more money. In a world where there's no appetite for that, he found a way to expand it minimally, but also take a subset of games and make them a premium event and thus find a way to bring in more revenue, which is always what we're trying to do. Like if we're being honest, the business rules the day, and it did again here. And just spare me with like, we're making people care about the regular season. No, you're not. This isn't different.
Yeah. I mean, I think like one of the most interesting things going on in the NBA right now is just the money has gotten insane and it's going to get so much bigger with the next national rights deal. And I've just been thinking a lot about, well, why has it gotten to this point? Well, it's because, like if you just look at all entertainment, there are very few things where people will tune into it at, like a given start time. Like this thing starts at 7 p.m. and I have to be on the couch and watching this. Live sports is one of those few things because you can watch it on a delay, but it loses so much of its value. So like just the sports has just benefited from, like being able to watch whatever you want, whenever you want. And it's one of the few things where you have to watch it at that time. And these guys are benefiting from that. But yeah, man, it's fine. That's my take.
Yep. It's better than we thought it might be. Like, I'll give it that. It's not as terrible as I thought it could be.
Yeah.
It's just not any of the upper echelon of what we were mythologizing it to be, what the promise of it might be. Like, job done for Adam Silver. He gets something done he wanted to get done. I'm sure they will try to find ways to pack more games into it and make it like a slightly larger tournament. That'll be like the next foray into revisiting this topic down the road. But for now, we'll see it. We'll play out. Fans won't be bothered by it. It doesn't mess with our season too much. So, we'll definitely tolerate it. Nobody will be mad about it, really. So, I guess that's a win.
That's everything I got on the play-in tournament. Any additional thoughts?
Nah. Other than like I could go the European soccer thing all day and just it's nothing like it. It's the only thing that's like it is the fact that it's another trophy in the league. It has no history. The league isn't old enough, and it doesn't represent anything. Like, if they could have dug up, like what they should have done, if they were going to try to do this, they should have like reached back into the lore of NBA history and made this like an ode to the ABA or something. They should have dressed it up in the history of the NBA somehow to try and entrench it in the place we came from. And then you could have done something. You could have at least sold it as, a different kind of thing. Because that's something that all these domestic cups and everything have going for them. Like, the FA Cup has been around forever and teams have won it for, 100 years. And, if you don't win the title, that's the other thing too, is like, in European soccer, the same 3 or 4 teams are expected to contend for the Premier League title every year. Having the domestic cups means that the teams in between can shoot for something and have a realistic aim. NBA is not entirely like that. Like, it's a bigger group of teams at the top that it could be. It's like, 8 to 10, and then injuries break a certain way. I think we have favorites, then injuries happen, and 3 teams we didn't expect are like still there in the conference finals or something. So,
Yeah, Silver is trying to make the regular season a little bit better by making it a little more like international football. And I think he, if you're really serious about this, and this would have been extremely difficult, it probably is the best version of itself by making the regular season a little more like American football. Fewer games, each one means a little bit more, but it's not going to happen. It's not realistic. Let's talk about Summer League. Pelicans are 2 games in. They played the Warriors game number 2 Sunday night. It was the late game, the last game on a Sunday night, man. That's like, pour that cup of coffee and stay up. I thought they've looked okay. I mean, it was a pretty rough performance in the first game. They had 29 turnovers. I think Darren Sebron had like 7 of them. Dyson turned it over a little bit. I mean, just looked out of sorts. It was terrible offense, frenetic, which happens a lot in Summer League. And they looked a little more poised in the second game. Sebron had a nice bounce back game, like 25, pretty efficient. Dyson did a little bit of everything. He's shooting a lot. He hasn't been like terribly efficient, but he is just impacting the game in a lot of different ways. What are your thoughts 2 games into the Pels Summer League schedule?
Yeah, I don't care if they win or lose. When I saw the roster that was announced, the thing that jumped off the roster to me was that there were going to be a ton of turnovers. As soon as I saw it, I texted, all my friends, like, they're going to turn it over a ton. Because realistically, like, what we're doing, we're testing out guys on ball that don't live on ball, and there's no one else on the roster that is like a true orchestrator, point guard, setting up the offense. And the other guys are not old enough, experienced enough, talented enough to know where to be on time. So it's gonna be a mess. There isn't a point guard there. And what we're trying to do, we're experimenting with guys' roles and traits, right? We're trying to flex Dyson into more guard responsibilities. We're asking him to do all the things that, if we're being honest, he's not going to do this for the Pelicans. But they want to see how much of it he can take on. Can they start shifting him to a role like that? Can he take on some of the responsibilities?
Yeah,
He
he's more
looked,
of a wing than a guard last season,
yeah.
and they're trying to be like, hey, you're a guard during summer league. You're a guard, working this stuff.
My problems with Dyson are still exactly the same. That's my one fear. The one thing when I look out there, like, he's clearly an NBA player. You watch the game and you're like, okay, he's one of the best players on the floor. That's very clear. He's fine in transition, and his defense stands out as completely unfair. He erases things. He's helping off of double teams with his back turned and getting a block or like denying a layup when he's guarding the low man and there's like a guy driving into the lane through a double team. He switches off and somehow ruins that play, or, you know, recovers to block a shot from 8 feet away with 2 steps. That stuff is pretty crazy. But that's the stuff we already knew he could do. So it's like more of the same. My issue with Dyson is still like, if we're going to get somewhere, I need him to shoot a ton because I need him to be comfortable shooting. I can't have him be a non-shooter.
And he is through these 2 games.
Yeah. And so that part's good. The same guy that I see getting into the lane, I see him have the ability to get to the lane, the ability to get to the rim. And while some of these layoff passes are nice, he does them so much because he cannot make up his mind inside of 5 feet. He does not know if he wants to go to his floater, if he wants to try to make a layup through contact, or if he wants to lay it off. His default tends to be to lay it off or find an outlet pass. And it kills me because he's so much more athletic than the guys he's playing against. You've already gotten 90% of the way there, and you never try to finish through contact. He always either dumps it off behind somebody's back or takes a reluctant floater. If he knows he's going to the floater from the jump, the floater's good. If he hesitates at all, which is something we saw last year, if he hesitates at all, it doesn't go in. He shorts it. And I want to see him play more instinctively when he gets to the rim, because that little spin move he's got going both directions works. His footwork is good. He's really, really fast. He keeps the ball tight in that move. He can get to the rim around real guys. You got to try and finish. If you're that strong and you're that athletic, you've got to try and finish some of those. And he just doesn't do so decisively. I don't know if he is shying away from contact or what it is, but all of his decision making around the rim bothers me. And that kills the potential of like future point guard Dyson Daniels in my head.
Yeah, I think I said towards the end of last season that the number one thing I wanted him to work on this offseason is just become a better finisher around the rim. That was a bigger priority for me than even the 3-point shot, which, you know, is obviously something he needs to continue to work on. And I think that remains the same for me. I just, like you said, I want to see more decisiveness, aggression, willing to go up and take contact and get fouled, you know, at the rim, because he's 6'8". Use that to your advantage. I mean, it is at times like a little Lonzo-ish in terms of like, just go up and try to finish. You know, Lonzo is a pretty big guard. Just go up and try to finish. You know, defensively, he really is special, man. Like the first play of the first game, he just rips somebody and goes down and gets an and one. Like, special player on the defensive end. Like, I'm a really big believer in him there. When I just look at his overall skill set, I'm like, you do so many things that I think you are such a nice fit around the stars New Orleans already has in place, and CJ Brandon and Zion. Like, you can, like, a lot of things you do make you a really good fit to play in those lineups. Your size, your versatility, your switchiness, you keep the ball moving, you can find the open man. He's just got to get better at a couple of things offensively. And I like that he's just kept shooting. He has gotten, you know, a lot of shots up in these first 2 games. That's good. That's what this time is for.
Yeah. And so he looks a lot the same. You know, I want to see that stuff change, but realistically, like I think I look at him and I see him as an important cog for what this roster is in a couple of years. He is kind of like he's the multi-tool that how he develops kind of determines what you're capable of doing with the roster in the next couple of years when the finances get tight. You need him to develop into either average perimeter shooter or actual point guard. And right now, he's neither of those things. If he could become a little bit of each, then you can do some interesting stuff with him, and he'll also survive. He will defend his way onto the floor. How much you're going to invest in him in the future is tied entirely to what he can do offensively. And I don't see a lot of things that are comfortable. But I do see a lot of traits still. Like, You see the athleticism in the half court. Like he can get around guys. If he has a move in his head, like if he knows he's going to do that spin move, he's doing it to everybody. He's getting around him. He's getting to the rim. And then it's just like a coin flip as to whether he's going to throw it out or randomly take a floater or step back. And I'm like, it just doesn't make any sense, because what it looks like is you just used all your athleticism to get within 3 feet of the rim, and then you decided not to shoot it. That's what it feels like every time.
He's kind of like right now, I think he's like sort of Derek Whitey, but way less polish on offense. That's kind of what he reminds me of.
I would like to see more passing to validate that comp. But yeah, that's right. That's a flawed shooter. That's a really, really good switchable defender. And honestly, Dyson's probably a bit stronger than Derek White. And I think he's a good bit bigger. Yeah, I like that for the most part. The rest of the team, look, EJ is shaking off rust. He had a couple little spurts that look nice, which, is good for him. Hawk hasn't shot the ball like percentage wise incredibly, but I don't really care, because I'm watching the type of shots he's taking and some of the ones that are going in. And I'm just like, that's what was advertised. That is weaponized shooting. People are talking about like, how is he going to get onto the floor and whatnot because of his defense and stuff. Like, if y'all are looking at this team wondering like if they're going to manage the fourth quarter to try to win the game and, switch out guys and try that, none of that matters. And the context of how they play has a lot to do with who they're playing around. I don't think Darian Sebron has been very good at all. And him and Dyson are doing a lot of the ball handling. Hawks run around like crazy, just like getting shots up. And a lot of them, like he's missing by like a little bit. And he's had a couple of really, really nice makes. He had a really nice 3-point make where his heel was on the out of bounds line in the first game. He played hurt, which was a cool thing to see. Like his knee started to bother him. He checked right back into the first game, ends up playing in the second one. No holdout for our tiny, scrawny NBA draft pick. He's just playing through it.
He had the one shot in the fourth quarter against Golden State where he took 2 dribbles to his left and someone right in his grill, and he hit
right
like a 17-footer. It was like, oh, that was some special contested shot making right there. I looked at it and I was like, that kind of reminded me of JJ Redick from 4 years ago. JJ's last good season when he was like 35 or whatever.
Yeah, so I don't care how many have gone in. His stroke looks great. What he's attempting to do, like you can see how what he's doing on that floor when he's playing with better players, when he's the worst guy on the floor for us, and that's what he's doing is running around all over the place, shooting on the move. We've been missing that. And that, there's a very, very clear path to get that out on the floor. I don't think it's going to be hard for him to find his way onto a floor, because I really think that's weaponized shooting. Aside from that, Carlo. Yikes. Look,
it's been a tough couple days for the Carlo crazies.
We're still here. We're all still here. I can count the members on more than 2 hands now. The Carlo crazies are getting wild out here, but it's been tough. He's using up all of those fouls. All of those fouls. The 2-man game, the pick and roll stuff, the hands have been sloppy, the movement's been sloppy, he's looked slow. It's just been real rough for our guy.
I mean, look, I don't have anything to add to that besides I was wondering in the first game, is he going to use all 10 of his fouls?
It was close. When I was making
10 of them in summer league.
I mean, I was making fun of high draft picks the other day. Like Brandon Miller's like at 6 fouls within like 5 minutes into the game. I'm sitting here, I'm like, how many do they get? They get like 10? Jesus Christ. Well, our guy is testing the limits. He is like, you know what? You gave me 10.
I think 10 might be too many. I think they should like knock that down to 8 or something like that.
Yeah, 8. 8 feels right. Like
2 more than normal in a 40-minute game.
Back.
Yeah, it's the game is 8 minutes shorter than a typical NBA game.
Yeah,
so
that feels right. But yeah, so like when people are watching, like advice to the viewer, don't judge the games as like they have to win Summer League, because winning Summer League literally doesn't matter. The roster that was put out there was not put out there to like try to have the best roster to win Summer League. It's to put the guys in positions that are going to be able to make the team. It's to put those guys in a position to do things that explore what they can be on the actual roster, and to put them in that situation over and over and over again. I want to see more of EJ. I love the way they've approached it. I love that we've been giving them, a true rotation, and they've been the starters and the closers, and that you're giving them real run together. And then there's a couple of guys like Sam Vecini mentioned Tavion as a guy that he wanted to see get on somebody's team, and Duke can shoot. So, maybe he sneaks away with a little two-way action here. We, no Liam Robbins yet, but we're interested to see what's going to come of him. So, there's something to look for with one of these other guys. But aside from that, it's really just look at the situational basketball, see what your guys are doing. So far, Dyson's the most important of the people out there. Hawk has been what you thought. EJ's rusty as hell. Dyson, we see everything validated that we already saw. Haven't seen much in the way of growth into the places we need him to go.
Yep. All right, let's shift gears. Over the weekend, I had a story that ran, and there was a news nugget in there. Reported that David Griffin got an contract extension in the spring. Just a little context about that. My understanding is that Griff, Trajan, and Willie are all aligned contractually. So, the key players in the organization, their deals all have the same number of years left on them. I think something I've known about for a while. I just couldn't put it out. I feel like a lot of people around the team knew about it, but some people were reacting negatively. Like, how could they do this? I mean, when I learned of it, I wasn't like, oh, this was a terrible move. I mean, look, Griff has a couple of major responsibilities. One of them is build a good roster, and it's a pretty good roster. And we could talk about some other stuff, but they have a good roster. So I'm not looking at the situation like, how could they do this or anything like that? They need their guys to play. And, I think I've said for weeks, if they play, they'll probably be pretty good.
It's just funny that it's July 10th and people were reacting to the news that happened back in the spring as if it happened today. And we're outraged with a fury today. It's guys, there's no point in even getting emotional. This happened way, way back there. This already happened. Look, leadership isn't just about the number of wins you got. Tommy Shepard didn't keep his job for 20 years by putting together the best record in basketball and winning a bunch of NBA titles. Ownership has to trust the guy that's running the place. They appear to. They have a good relationship with him. He has a good relationship with the people that work with him. They've built a pretty good roster. And the biggest question we have about the entire thing is whether the stars play or not, because they're not healthy or they are. The other thing that's not to be left unsaid is management, leadership in general doesn't tend to get to the final years of their contract ever in leagues like this, because it sends a terrible message to everyone coming in that their head could get chopped off at any minute. And nobody
can make them make rash decisions or unwise decisions too.
Yeah. Look, Dell Demps famously his seat was on fire every year for 5 years. And he worked for a bunch of different bosses. That's a hellscape of a job. So the other things, generally speaking, even if you hate David Griffin, you should never want to hear he's on the last year of his job. You should never want to hear he's on the last year of his contract, because he probably should have already been fired if they let him get to that point. So, there's that part of it too, where the business side of it makes a lot of sense to me. I think there's a lot of stuff that fans just don't care about in terms of the behind the scenes stuff that gets well taken care of, that, is part of the job. And I think the biggest thing is trust and loyalty. We've worked with this guy for a few years. How do we feel about the relationship? We feel pretty good about it. Okay, let's keep doing it. That stuff matters. And that's the stuff that fans don't really care that much about.
I think Griff's biggest W in his time in charge is if you're going to be in the New Orleans market, you are just going to have to draft and develop talent. That is essential if you're going to have any success. And Griff, when he got this job, said, Trajan Langdon, come here, be my number 2. You're going to be heavily involved in the draft and things like that. And that team he's got there of Trajan Langdon, Bryson Graham, and others, and Griff is involved in it too, of, drafting and developing, 2019, maybe didn't go so well, but after that, it's been pretty good. Like they got Najee Marshall as an undrafted guy. The next year after that was an incredibly good draft. Trey Murphy at 17, Herb at 35, Jose Alvarado, undrafted guy. I guess we'll see about Dyson at 8 the year after that, but that to me is his biggest win of like, okay, we're going to put a team in here and get some people in here, and he's going to be involved in it where we think we can draft and develop talent. So that to me is the best thing that he has done since he's been in charge.
Yeah, the draft grade, like people are going to go back to the trade back Jackson Hayes, Nikhil. They're going to say that year is the reason that, they're actually a terrible drafting team. And realistically, like when you add context to what those picks were at the time, like, you indict the pick because Darius Garland was there. And at the time, they're invested in Lonzo. Drew's still here. They have true starting guards. And Darius Garland, coming out of school, was tiny guy that we don't know if he can actually run an offense. He was tiny guy who can really shoot. And that's what you knew. And he was not like this Teflon guy. And now he looks very different in the league. Hindsight's easy. So like that year's terrible. And then there's the Trey, Herb, Jose year. So boom, now you're back to even. I think generally speaking, that's how it goes for most of the league. That's how it goes for most teams. And they're on the right side more than they're on the wrong side. And that's really all you can ask for. It's probably average to slightly above average in terms of overall performance. They're not, Charlotte's got their James Book nights and whatnot too. So it's just, I think they're like, maybe they are a C+ or a B- as a drafting organization. I think he nailed the big trades. He didn't have a lot to do about, Drew and AD. He didn't have a lot of control over what was going to happen there other than getting them out to a place and getting value back for him.
He revolutionized. AD was excellent. AD was excellent. CJ McCollum trade was excellent. I think the Drew Holiday one, just if you look at the players they actually got back, was like, yeah, like that wasn't great. But the other two
if you're trying to get if part of the goal there is you're getting him to a contender because you care about the player and like that's part of the deal, then your hands are a little tied in terms of like what you are going to get back. You're kind of you're starting from a point of like, let me get the best thing I can from a list of things I didn't really want. So they pushed all those picks way off into the future, which I mean, he basically created the monster picks and swaps deal that now everybody executes for these stars. That stuff, like, that happened. So those deals were good. A lot of his draft history is good. They're doing good finding guys on the fringes. They need to find big men now. And hopefully EJ and maybe Liam Robbins are guys that are actually going to play. But otherwise, yeah, like it's not like we're like, dive in the dumpsters with this roster. It's not like there are 3 guys that are good and everybody else is awful. It's actually like we have 14 guys that everybody in the league would totally bet on. And the issue is just like getting them to mesh the right way, using them all, maybe trying not to use too many guys, and making their skills fit together because they're elite at things that don't necessarily tie together perfectly.
So you texted me and you're like, I want to talk about your rabble rousing. So hit me with any rabble rousing related questions you got.
Well, I just wanted to chat. I think the biggest one for me. So there are two major conflicts with Christian, we can call it, in the Twitterverse this past week. And one of them is the conversation about the willingness to pay the tax, how much payroll and everything. There was a little guff about that. And then there was a little bit of guff about the article and like the relationships with Brandon and Zion and a little bit of, hotly worded criticism of how those relationships have gone. And people are debating those. I don't think there is any debate. The one I was more interested is actually in the payroll one, only from the standpoint that I think what you tweeted, like where we ranked in terms of league payroll for several years in a row, and kind of gave the organization credit for, we were middle of the NBA and spending on payroll for all of this time. So it's not like they were like cheaping their way out the entire time. And I actually think you gave them like a little too much credit.
Oh, wow. This is the zag to my zag.
Yeah, I'm zagging you even further.
You're zagging my zag.
I think you gave him too much credit. Look, being middle of the road in the NBA is fine. Like, yes, they weren't like stripping the chairs out of the arena to sell them. They weren't George Shinning everything during those years, but being like 17th and 18th in the league in payroll, like, yeah, your team wasn't bargain bin shopping at Walmart. You weren't the absolute bottom of the league. Your payroll should be middle of the road. You have a star or two on your team. Your payroll is going to be higher than the bottom. Sure.
Let me read it. Let me read it real quick. I pulled this data from Spot Track. This is where the Pelicans have ranked in spending on payroll in the Benson era. This is every year. 19th, 12th, not available. 18th, 17th, 6th. They were 6th in 2017-18, which is the season they made the conference semifinals. 21st, 25th, 15th, 17th, 16th. So while they are one of two NBA franchises who would never pay the luxury tax, which I've said a lot, which is true, they're usually somewhere in the middle.
You know why? They tend to get up to the top of the draft and they pick the number one guy and he sticks around for a second contract. Like that automatically brings you to like the 20th.
I'm trying to be as fair as possible, but
I am relitigating because I think it wasn't fair. I think it was honestly a little too forgiving. Look, the 2017-18 year, Dell Demps hot seat year, a guy that he didn't like in the league becomes available. He takes a swing. DeMarcus Cousins comes the year prior. He's here to start that year. So we start the year with the Twin Towers. We start the year doing it big. So there's a lot of salary because Drew and we're doing it big. That's tons and tons of salary in those three guys. The rest of that roster was garbage. And then like Rondo was here. He was hurt to start the year and then he comes around. So Rondo was here too. So I guess that's fine. But the only like real like celebratory like spending concept there is that after DeMarcus goes down, they make the move for Mirotic and like they were willing to continue investing in the team after something swerved them and went south. And so like that's the one place where I'll say yes, getting up to 6th, that's cool. That 1 year deserves credit. The rest of those years, like, yeah, we had 2 stars on the team every year that we were paying a max contract to, and they didn't win anything. Like, okay.
So here's kind of how this goes based on my conversations. New Orleans is a challenging market. There are not very many corporate sponsors. There are hardly any Fortune 500 companies. There's just not those big corporate dollars. And, you know, the team definitely sits there and is like, this makes it challenging. We don't have the big sponsors to buy our boxes and yada, yada, yada. And it's a chicken or the egg argument of, well, you've never really been good. And it's like, if you have like a great team, would that change? But I don't know because they haven't really been good for multiple years in a row. Like every time they are good, something bad has happened, unfortunately. So like what would happen if you sustained winning for 2, 3, 4 years in a row?
Look, they don't have the fortune. No, they don't have the one giant company that's going to buy 10 suites or buy 2,000 seats. No, they don't have that. But they do have a lot of individual, like family run, family owned oil, gas, machinery, offshore based services. There are plenty of those businesses. And let me tell you, they have to wine and dine people. They got to take people out for stuff. And like the NBA is still an event. Those tickets, those boxes do still fill up for those guys. They still have to entertain clients. They still got to have tickets to give away. Plenty more of them would come if you're good. And there's tons of them here.
We saw what that building was like when there was a great product on the floor. Go back to the month of December. Go watch the highlights. That place was jumping. If you build it, they will come. I really do believe that.
Yeah.
I think that place was electric in December.
I think the challenge, I agree with them that like, no, there's not like 3 companies you get to go to and they cover 30% of your sales and they help you out with like marketing your stuff. Like, yeah, we don't have that. But there's enough here. There's something here that would make it feel different. Like these are like people that you can touch, their families, their guys you went to school with, parents that own a multi-million-dollar company that would buy a box. Like it would feel a lot more organic. And that's why it's special when they are good, because these are real tangible people. It's not just a bunch of guys in suits from some company that don't actually live here. So, you know, I think there's more on the table here if you're good, honestly, in terms of the feeling and like what it could be. So interesting nugget, but I just, I wanted to kick back on the payroll ranking thing because I was like, I mean, this is nice to like throw him a bone, but other than the 1 year, like those other rankings are just like, yeah. So we've gotten to go to the top of the lottery a handful of times, and then we paid that guy again. Way to go, squad. Notably, one of these guys is not here anymore. That guy, he's gone. Oh no, that guy's gone. This guy still here for now.
The last thing I got to say is that the thing I wrote Sunday really incensed some people. So I thought, look, I can't tell you how to think. You got to think how you want to think. I just wanted to say, I guess the thought process behind that piece was one, the interest in Scoot Henderson was very real. It was so real. They met with him in the days before the draft, according to The Athletic. I've been told, and I think this has been reported, they got access to Scoot's medicals, which you don't get access to a guy's medicals, who's like going to go way before your pick if you're not pretty serious. And I basically just wanted to do the piece to try to explain, well, why was there this interest, and to just take note of, hey, look, they're deciding to stay the course after the season they just had. And that might not be the wrong decision, but it is a decision because there was a lot that happened last year, and we need to be honest about how the season went wrong. And the reason I think they were interested in Scoot, and you even heard Shams Charania say culture setter. It was as much about, their belief in his desire, his wantingness to maximize his greatness and what that could do if you add a potential star who, can be like a true leader for you. What does that do to this team that already has a lot of good role players on it? So that was the purpose of the piece. Maybe I didn't explain it well in the piece, but that was why I did it.
I think clearly you're obviously lying, and you wrote the piece to piss everybody off, and that's all you wanted to do. That's clearly your motives. Look, I don't understand, and maybe I've been paying too close of attention for too long to like react the way that a lot of people do to that stuff. This is the thing that I appreciate about how you write, how you do your job. You are not afraid to talk about the dark places and the scary places that we don't like to talk about. And you talk about them honestly, and you're not afraid of what that's going to mean. And like, I talked to you about this earlier this week. I've gotten to the point now where like I see people's responses to it and I start getting triggered and I want to go like defend you. And I'm like, but here's the thing about Christian. He doesn't need me or want me to do any of that. And I'm probably just embarrassing him if I do. So I'm just going to sit back here and laugh with him because like we talk about this stuff. We talk about how much of this stuff that goes on around the team. We're nearly at our 100th episode here. You write articles in addition to this show. You are a living like almanac of what's happened around the team for the last 5-6 years. You remember every little thing because you wrote about them. They're notes of your life as much as the team's. The casual fan doesn't remember that stuff and doesn't care to. And like the thing I would just love for everybody to do is like if there's one thing that I would take and like just advise people to do. I know you don't love hearing that your favorite thing isn't the best shiny thing in the whole wide world. If nobody that's like truly sourced comes up and argues with you after you write that article, comes out and argues with you, calls you out and says like, you're wrong on the facts here. Who the hell are we to say that, you wrote this and it didn't happen, you're making it up? Like, in what world is that a rational response to the article? That's the biggest thing that I struggle with, because I think like there are criticisms of two of the two most important players of the team in there. I think they were completely fair. Like, sure, were they a little hotly worded? Fine. Has it been earned? Yeah. But I saw some people like debating whether or not like the stuff with Brandon was controversial at all, like his ability to return to play. Like, we've talked about this 100 times. Like, CJ called him out recorded himself on a microphone, said it on a hot mic that Brandon misses games that he probably shouldn't miss. Like, that is real. That's not just not happening. And it doesn't mean that players on the team don't like these guys. There's a difference between liking the guy, enjoying the guy, and the guy making decisions that are correct for everyone and for the team and that, represent the highest level of competition possible. So I guess, that's kind of my spiel for that one.
And just because what happened last season happened, like, it doesn't mean they can't be good. next year, or it doesn't even mean that they should trade them. I mean, that's Griff and Trajan's decision. That's above my pay grade of whether you. I mean, I don't know. I think I've given opinions on it, but like that doesn't like they could easily be good with the exact same roster next year. That is very much a possibility, and that's probably my expectation that they will be good at least. Like that honestly is my expectation going into next year. Even if the biggest thing they did was Jackson Hayes left and Billy Hernangomez went back to Europe and they signed Cody Zeller, even if that's the biggest thing, and Hawkins too, roster wise.
Yeah. Look, clearly you just want to watch the world burn, and that's what you're here for. And that's how you live and breathe.
But the reason, like, I guess why it makes me mad is like we have to be honest about this stuff because this has been one of the biggest underachieving teams in the NBA. If you look at the totality of this 4 years, like look at all the talent that's been in the building, and the highest they finished is 9th. So something has to change. The results have to be better.
And I don't think that's unfair to say. I appreciate the fact that you're willing to say it the way that you do, and that you're willing to tread into things like flatly. And this is just open, honestly, like we know all of the media members of this area. This is no criticism of anybody else. You're among, if not the best sourced person around the team. And you may debate that and want to, downplay that, but you're one of the people that we know is like well sourced and really, really does his homework every day around this team. The fact that you are willing to write the critical stuff, no one else ever does. Like no one else ever has like the critical, like the deep insight thing that is also critical. We get like insightful pieces about like the players and their background and their upbringing and things like that. We get a lot of that. We get a lot of like profiles of the team itself and where it's headed. We get like really nice, happy pieces about like what motivates Willie Green and all those things. We have to have the hard stuff too. Like this is the real, like the meaty stuff. I just appreciate the fact that you're willing to go there. Again, I'll lay out here. Me and Christian have not been like friends for a decade. I'm not just saying all this because he's my best friend in the entire world and I'm going to protect my guy. We decided to do this podcast because we like talked on Twitter a handful of times. We talked about it. We both had the same ideas of like what we would want it to be. And that was before I even knew he'd asked me to do it. But I've gotten to the point now where like, yes, I'm more exposed to him on a day-to-day basis, on a week-to-week basis. And it's hilarious, the criticism that you get. Because if you were able to just drop everything out there that you've ever heard in or around this team, like no one would know what to do. They really wouldn't know what to do. So I just appreciate you being willing to go back to that spot, being willing to take that heat all the time. It's a hard thing to do at the end of the day. Like not a lot of people want to do it. It's easier to do it the other way. So
Pelicans win 50 games next season and everyone's life will be better. Everyone's.
Yeah. 50 games and everybody's views and downloads go up. We can all write nothing but fluffy stuff. We can be so happy. Oh, it'll be the best.
I'll take like 40. I'll definitely take like 47 wins. Just give me like 47 wins next year.
I want 50. I'm sorry. I'm not letting it go. This team should win 50.
All right, guys. Well, we are getting pretty deep into the offseason. We're going to keep cranking out weekly episodes. I don't know, for at least the next few weeks. And then I might just disappear for a while because I need a break. But
so the McCrary hours are coming, is what you're telling me. We're gonna get into the deep parts of summer, the deep run of August, and I'm gonna get to chase some of my more like comedic exploits.
Listen, man,
this is me pressuring him on air. This is me.
You do whatever you want to do.
I'm putting it on him right here, right now, in front of everyone. All right. That's us.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening. Talk to you again soon.